Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Ready or Not 2, Here I Come. Starring Samara Weaving, Catherine Newton, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Sean Hattasey, David Cronenberg, and Elijah Wood, directed by Matt Bettinelli Olpin and Tyler Gillett, aka Radio Silence. Now, I have seen the movie twice, and the only person that's returning to this cast is Samara Weaving as Grace, but how will this compare to the original film? Let's get into it. We start right when the first movie ends with Grace McCauley, returned by Samara Weaving, telling the paramedics about her in laws until she gets knocked the fuck out and taken to the hospital and is for some reason cuffed up in the hospital bed in Connecticut as she gets interviewed by a detective while her sister Faith, played by Catherine Newton, comes in and talks their differences, and she's Grace's emergency contact. While she explains what happened in the entire last movie, like how she made it for example, and how everybody blew up, and I like we get a point of view shot with Grace and the shots throughout the movie. It was very interesting. We get to Rhode Island where Titus and Ursula Danforth, played by Sean Hattasey and Sarah Michelle Gellar, hear about the events that happened in the first movie, and they hear from their father Chester, played by David Cronenberg, and their lawyer, played by Elijah Wood, as he's just called the lawyer, as they set up a new game against Grace, and they involve Faith into it, as well, with Chester involving hitmen throughout the world in Spain, New Jersey, where we meet Bill Wilkinson, played briefly by Kevin Durand, whom I'm a fan of after Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, as well as England, and Chester asks Titus and Ursula to suffocate him with a pillow. And that was quick for David Cronenberg because he didn't do anything in this movie, as Titus and Ursula want to win a place in the high chair in their ritual after killing Grace off while Grace and Faith go to the police station with the detective until he gets killed by Bill, who tries to kill Grace and Faith but is unsuccessful after he blows up on his own, like what happened at the end of the last movie. And the action sequences were fun, as it was funny in a haha kind of way to see Catherine Newton react the way she did. And they almost escape until the lawyer captures Grace and Faith to involve them in the game. And the characters are very entertaining in this whole movie. Ursula and Titus evacuate a hotel where a wedding happens, as well as everybody else, and everybody arrives from England, Spain, as well as everybody everywhere else, as son of one of the hunters asks for a Wi-Fi password for his Nintendo Switch. As one is very excited while the other smokes some weed, and it begins with everybody learning the news of Chester's death, as Ursula and Titus lie about it, and as they killed him in his sleep. Well, yeah, they suffocate him with a pillow, anyways. And the lawyer comes in and explains the game rule and the rules of the game, and they knock out Grace and Faith and handcuff them together. And they set up works for a sequel, despite it's not as good as the original film, but it's still a fun time at the movies. The hunters start by choosing their weapons, and the leader of each family sign for their lives for their families as they put them in a golf field in the ninth hole. And the only ones with wheels are Ursula and Titus, as the others don't have wheels, as one of them, hunters Wan Chan, has a drone and offers a way for Grace and Faith out of the situation until Ursula shoots the drone down. And Grace and Faith make a run for it after the drone goes down and hides from Ursula and Titus as Ursula brings up the system. And the acting in this was pretty decent for a horror action comedy. Grace and Faith find a castle and almost get killed by one of the hunters, and he misses every fucking shot. And Faith gets an idea to pull up some smoke, and he continues to miss until hitting the gasoline filled with air and almost gets one of the hunters, almost killed, I'll say. And now this motherfucker misses every single shot while he almost gets his man killed, which is stupid enough as it is, while Grace has blood trailing as she bleeds, and Faith heals her and take a shot after hand, and a hunter with a mask comes in to look for them, while they hide in a place where they get handcuffs cut out the handcuffs cut out, and have another fight sequence and get this motherfucker killed by cutting him in a laundry machine. And this movie is filled with good and smart ideas. The brother of a man who was just killed named Madhu decides to give the opportunity to the high chair to his wife Martina hunt for them and sign the contract while Grace grabs the phone from Virage's to call 911. And Ursula answers it to the operator, and Wan Chen makes an offer to Grace and Faith a way to out of this by marrying her son Wang Cheng until the sniper comes in and Wan Chen kills him. And because she killed him accidentally, she explodes anyways, as does Wang Cheng. And Faith grabs the sword to fight back, and Grace and Faith once again argue about the problem. And the problem I'm having was the way the Hunter characters, as I don't get to know them, and they come off unlikable because they seem like assholes, which is a good thing, but it felt like a problem. Titus and Ursula get approached by Grace and Faith as Ursula begs Faith to kill Titus, and she buys some time while Martina gets out of the castle and leaves Madhu. And Grace fights Ursula and gets stabbed like she did in the last movie and gets out of it alive, and Madhu is pissed at himself and cusses everyone out while Grace and Faith hide and yell and tell each other off tell one another and separate as Grace comes off like a bitch during that scene. She felt very one note in this whole movie. Francesca finds Grace and they spray pepper spray at each other, which was pretty fucking hysterical until Grace beats up on Francesca and can see again eventually. And I've never been sprayed by pepper spray, but I can imagine it hurting like a motherfucker. While Titus beats up on Faith and sucker punches Ursula as she believes they can use Faith as bait for Grace to come after her, as the cinematography was interesting like I said before. Meanwhile, Grace gets to the lobby and kills off Francesca and looks for Faith and almost gets killed. And one thing I should have said earlier, but I didn't before, I like the chemistry between Samara Weaving and Catherine Newton as they're entertaining together. Despite they argue all the time, but whatever. Excuse me. Grace decides to come out as long as Titus marries her so he can get the high chair as he agrees, and Grace has a room to change before the wedding while Faith becomes a bridesmaid, and Ursula comes to Grace's room and tells she would never wanted to hurt her, and which I call bullshit on that, because why did she do it in the fucking first place? Well, she explains Titus is a murderer as he wants too much control, until Titus comes in and kills Ursula off by force choking her and breaking her neck, which makes him one ruthless motherfucker. And the wedding begins surrounded by supporters of Satan, and I like the way the deaths worked for each and every character that are killed, as they get some blood from Titus and Grace as he accepts her hand and reluctantly accepts her hand and signs their names away. And he almost, as he kisses her, and gets the high chair until she kills his ass and takes his ring of the high chair and dumps him in the death pit. And Grace learns from the lawyer she can do whatever she wants with the ring and removes herself, throwing the ring in the death circle while she gets everybody else killed as dawn approaches, and everyone gets every single last one of them blows up, and Grace gets to go with herself and Faith, and they walk out together. And the climax proves my point on how fun this series has been so far. But was it as good as the original? Let's talk about it. I'll give this movie a 7.2 out of 10. Not quite as good as the first movie, but still a good time at the movies. And I liked the shots throughout the movie as they were interesting, as the action sequences were fun to watch, and the characters were absolutely entertaining. And the setup works for a sequel to a horror action comedy. The acting in this was pretty decent. The movie is filled with good and smart ideas, but at the same time, there are problems with the movie. For example, I don't like the hunters, and I don't like them as characters, as they come off like assholes, which is a good thing, but it felt like a problem because I don't know their names. Some of them I'll say, while Grace comes off like a bitch in this whole movie, as she was very one note, while some scenes were pretty fucking hysterical. The cinematography, like I said, was interesting throughout, and the chemistry between Samara Weaving and Catherine Newton was entertaining. So I'm giving this movie a recommendation, as, like I said, it's a fun time at the movies, and the climax proves my point on why I like the deaths of every single character that gets killed throughout the movie. And I did like the movie, but not as much as the original. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me for this Ready or Not series. And until if they ever make a part 3, which, based on that ending, they might. Ready or not, here I come.